Alright folks, welcome back to the Don's channel. I am the Don Father and I'm about to do a reaction for a brand new patron of ours, Ernest Blackwell in the United States of America. Thank you very much Ernest, or Ernie, I'm not too sure what you go by, for your support and this request. You have requested a Scottish legend, William Wallace, the Scottish hero, explained in 10 minutes. And this will probably surprise quite a few people who have probably watched Mel Gibson's Braveheart Hollywood movie, which was a romantic sensationalised version of William Wallace's story. Of course he was a hero, but some of the stuff in the movie is not true. So at the end of the day, this should still be a fantastic story about, yes, a Scottish hero, but one that isn't 100% factual as what you'll have seen in the movie. If you're from America and you're not too sure about the history of William Wallace, this might be surprising to some. Anyway, the link to the original video will be in the description section below, so will our Patreon account if you'd like to get a personalised video request and shout out like Ernest has. And then please check that out, or simply join the channel as a member and get your requests through that way. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment and share, and put the bell on so you don't miss any of our future uploads. Thank you very much. Anyway, no more talking, let's go!
This video is brought to you by Captivating History. The Scottish hero William Wallace has become a symbol of liberty for his unlikely successes against the English. He is probably best known from the inaccurate but entertaining Hollywood movie Braveheart. His is an underdog story with a tragic ending. Tactically brilliant and totally fearless, this Scottish leader has passed into legend. Although Wallace would meet a grisly demise, his death would not be in vain, and a new generation of Scottish rebels would emulate his deeds. William Wallace was born sometime around AD 1270. His origins are shrouded in mystery, and various places in Scotland have been identified as his possible birthplace. Some people believe he may have been a Welsh immigrant. Either way, his father, Sir Malcolm Wallace, was a small-time landowner of no distinction. Wallace was born during the peaceful reign of King Alexander III, a time in which Scotland flourished. Alexander's lengthy reign was characterized by a strong economy, an abundance of North Sea trade, and a prolonged peace with England. The peace would not last. A perfect storm was brewing for Scotland. South of the border, the relatively weak King Henry III of England died and was replaced by the warlike and ambitious Edward I. The English king would soon acquire the name the Hammer of the Scots. When Scotland's king died in 1286, Scotland was thrown into chaos. Edward I wasted no time in taking advantage of the situation. All Alexander III's children had died before him, and his only heir was a young granddaughter, Margaret of Norway. Unfortunately, Margaret also died when she was just 7 years old, leaving the throne of Scotland vacant in 1290. No less than 13 claimants came forward to take the throne. The Council of Nobles was paralyzed. Uncertain how to proceed, the Lords of Scotland tragically misjudged Edward I's character and asked him to help them pick a king. It was a risky decision, but one intended to stave off a civil war. They soon discovered Edward was not to be trusted. Scotland had been a vassal state in the past, and Edward insisted that he still held an ancestral claim which gave him power over Scotland. He wanted acknowledgement of this if he was to act as an arbiter. Many Scottish nobles had estates in England, and Edward's large army and impressive military record silenced any serious protest. The nobles played for time, insisting they would settle the matter when they had a king. They had little choice but to let him do what he wanted, praying he would leave when he was done. While Edward did help the Scottish pick a king, he first asked that the nobles swear an oath of allegiance to him personally. Although the chosen king, John Balliol, was crowned in 1292, King John's power would be continually eroded by Edward. Legal decisions on Scottish matters would increasingly be made in England, and Edward treated John like a vassal. When England and France declared war on each other, John took his chance to throw off the English king's yoke. He declared his allegiance to France, and Edward responded by seizing his lands in England. Following Scottish raids into English territory, Edward invaded Scotland in 1296. He attacked the thriving merchant city of Berwick and had its inhabitants brutally massacred. King John...
Just stop it there because I don't know if this place will be mentioned again. It's not pronounced Berwick, it's Berwick. It's a silent W, so just Berwick. It's been between Scotland and England like that. It sits in the northeast corner of England now. Funny thing is, there is actually a football team or a soccer team, if you're watching from the United States or Canada or anywhere like that, who actually plays in the Scottish football leagues, but Berwick itself actually is situated in England. But as I say, it's kind of went between Scotland and England over the so many years, and it's the place of a lot of battles between the English and the Scots. And the funny thing was, when I was actually in Berwick, it's a beautiful little place to go visit. You can see all the sort of fortified castles and stuff like that all around the place. But a lovely little place, little coastal place as well. You could go into one shop and they almost sound like they've got an English accent, and then you can go into another shop and they sound like they've got a Scottish accent, but they've both all grew up in the same town, which is bizarre. Maybe even going to the same school as each other. I find it strange, but some of them had Scottish accents, some of them had English, and I asked them, did you move here? No, we've actually grew up here, which is bizarre. But anyway, Berwick, it's pronounced.
John lost the Battle of Dunbar and resigned his position before the year was out. John was soon imprisoned in England, humiliated, and his royal insignia was ripped from his tablet. Scotland's Stone of Destiny, a stone used in ceremonies to crown Scottish kings, was removed to England.
Yep.
Scotland wouldn't get it back until 1996. Edward rebuilt the city of Berwick and made it the English capital of Scotland. He installed English sheriffs and soldiers, but did not appoint a new king. Although not all the nobility was particularly invested in Scottish identity, many ordinary people were, and general unrest broke out across Scotland. Small rebellions and civil disobedience plagued the land. It is believed that William Wallace's father was probably one of those killed in the fighting. Almost everything about Wallace's early life, before 1297, is contested, but there are many popular stories about Wallace from this period. He appears in folklore as a sort of Scottish Robin Hood figure who carried out guerrilla warfare against the English. According to one tradition, Wallace became an outlaw when confronted by the son of an English constable who tried to confiscate his knife. Wallace supposedly stabbed the man in the heart and escaped, thanks to a crowd of local Scotsmen. In another story, Wallace got into a fight at Irvine Water after refusing to surrender his fishing catch to a group of English soldiers. He supposedly disarmed them with his fishing pole, stealing their horses and weapons. Scottish writers record that English rule over Scotland was brutal, and that Wallace was brutal in response. He is depicted in many stories as indiscriminately killing every vulnerable English person he meets in retaliation against the occupying soldiers. While we can't confirm these early stories, it seems likely Wallace was causing trouble for English soldiers from an early date. In the spring of 1297, recorded history has Wallace appearing with a group of 30 others, murdering the English sheriff of Lanark and his men, burning the area to the ground. This event became known as the Lanark Massacre, and it made Wallace famous. According to the legend, Wallace attacked the sheriff because he had murdered the woman he loved. This is the version of events as depicted in the movie Braveheart, but historians are divided as to whether it is true. Wallace certainly had many other reasons to despise the English. By 1297, Wallace was well known, and many important rebels from all parts of society would rally to his side in a more united attempt to fight the English. Although many Scottish nobles would fail to protect their countrymen, Scotland's bishops would form an educated and effective resistance network. Wallace would soon meet up with the rebels Sir William Douglas, and together they marched on the city of Scone. The attack was an early success for Wallace and gave the Scottish renewed confidence. While Wallace was fighting in Scone, an important Scottish nobleman, Andrew Moray, was able to raise a force and recapture most of the north of Scotland. For their spectacular victories, Moray and Wallace were both named Guardians of Scotland. in effect making them temporary regions while Scottish lands were recovered. As a relative nobody, this was an incredible rise in status for Wallace. The English would not stand idly by. A huge army was amassed to counter the progress of the Scottish rebellion. On September 11, 1297, the two sides met on Stirling Bridge in what would be William Wallace's most celebrated victory. The Scottish were considerably outnumbered by the English and had no cavalry, leaving the English confident they could not lose. Conventional wisdom held that foot soldiers could never defeat a full cavalry. Wallace waited until the English army tried to cross the narrow bridge at Stirling before beginning the attack. Funneled into a tight space, the sheer number of English soldiers counted for little. Wallace prevailed and was able to reoccupy Stirling Castle. Next, he recaptured the English capital of Berwick, and Scotland was momentarily freed from English rule. For his efforts, he was knighted by Scottish nobility. Wallace took his role as guardian seriously, recruiting and training more troops to prepare for any future engagements. He also began an aggressive campaign of raids into English territory as a form of retribution. Wallace was an intelligent military tactician, making use of schiltron, a military tactic of forming a great circle, a battle formation with upwards of 2,000 men, all carrying 12-foot-long spears.
Wow.
This compact formation of pikemen was ultra-effective against cavalry charges. Unfortunately for Wallace, the tenacious King Edward was not finished with Scotland. Edward would rebuild his army on a massive scale, engaging the Scottish at the Battle of Falkirk in 1298. It was a bloody battle, and England's greatest weapon, their powerful longbowmen, won them the day. Edward regained control of parts of southern Scotland, and Wallace resigned his guardianship. Although Scotland would ask for help from both the French and the Pope, they received no aid, and Edward quickly clawed back most of Scotland. Once again, the Scottish nobility surrendered one by one to the English king. William Wallace would stand defiant and refuse to surrender. Although Wallace would continue to resist the English, he would struggle with the support of the Scottish grandees. Stirling Castle, the last outpost of the Scottish resistance, was captured in 1304. Wallace himself was apprehended in 1305. Although Edward was reasonably gentle with Scottish lords, Wallace's stubborn bravery was rewarded with a horrific execution. He was charged with treason and brutality against English civilians. Wallace was hung, drawn, and quartered, a punishment that saw him strangled, castrated, and disemboweled before finally being cut into quarters. Although Wallace met a terrible end, his name became a watchword for liberty. Soon after his death, a new rebellion under Robert the Bruce finally freed Scotland from the English. Robert would copy and improve upon the military tactics used by William Wallace, using guerrilla warfare and schiltrons of pikemen to combat heavy cavalry. Wallace's successes would be immortalized in a stirring 15th century patriotic poem written by the minstrel Blind Harry. To this day, the book remains a bestseller in Scotland, second only to the Bible in terms of sales. To learn more about William Wallace, check out our book, William Wallace, a captivating guide to a freedom fighter and martyr who impacted Scottish history and Scotland's independence from England. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, grab your free Mythology Bundle ebook while still available.
Well, that's the end of the video, and I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about William Wallace, a little bit more factual stuff there. I've actually heard a lot more than what that's obviously only a 10-minute video, but there was a BBC documentary series, A History of Scotland, narrated by Neil Oliver, and it was absolutely brilliant, and he tells you an awful lot about this period in time in Scottish history. The one thing I want to say, like you hear there about the Battle of Falkirk and then a few other little things going on, and then obviously get captured, hung, drawn and quartered as a warning basically to other potential Scottish rebellions and uprisings, which they obviously took no heed to. And then you've seen the rise of King Robert the Bruce, who was brutal. He was absolutely brutal. So there's a man that you need to learn a lot about, and he ultimately won Scotland's biggest battle against the English at Bannockburn, which you see at the very end of Braveheart in the movie. The one thing about that movie that really boils my piss is how much of a traitor it makes the Bruce look. That is pretty annoying. There was he was brutal, but he was also a bit of a tactical genius. When they talk about the guerrilla warfare side of things, yeah, there's quite a lot of that if you actually want to go in and hear his story. But William Wallace, one thing that you have to say about him, as brutal as he was a very intelligent man. And one of the things they did say with the use of the bishops, who actually were behind a lot of the uprising, the rebellion at the start, they actually used Wallace because of his ability to recruit as such. I believe he was brilliant at getting numbers, and maybe it was people seen what he was willing to do and they thought, this is a man we could get behind. Fearless bravery, tactical guerrilla warfare genius as well. You've got to remember, they were coming up against a well-trained army, probably one of the best on the planet at the time, and they were fighting them with like pitchforks and stuff a lot of the time. But he's actually developed a way of defending themselves and also taking the battle to the English, who were the more advanced, more trained, better equipment, had cavalry, had everything going for them, and he was actually starting to take ground back off them. It must have been really inspiring for a lot of the Scottish people who would have lived back then under occupying English forces, to see somebody going, fucking no, enough, and taking the fight to them. So, like, brilliant story. Thanks very much, Ernest. Really appreciate the request. Of course, it's a lot to do with my country, but a lot of Americans, more Scottish roots in America than actually in Scotland. There's more people who have Scottish DNA in America and Canada than there is in Scotland, so it's quite amazing, and I know a lot of people really admire the history. But one thing I will say is, don't let the film Braveheart's very entertaining, an enjoyable movie, but if you like history and you want to get the facts of it, Braveheart isn't the way to do it. It's a sensationalised version, a romanticised version of events. Of course, I think he even lies in bed with the French princess who's due to marry Longshanks, the Hammer of Scots, as he was called, in that depiction, or in that sorry, bit of history there you've seen in that video. His son's wife was to be the French princess, and William Wallace bedded her and stuff. So it was all this romanticised story. The nobles, of course, I think, again, what you've got to remember when you talk about the nobles is they didn't stand a chance. If they kept trying to fight them, they probably would have been slaughtered. So they've had to surrender. It was almost like, know when you're defeated, but don't give up. The will to fight, but surrender was probably the right thing to do, or else they would have just been massacred. They would have been massacred at those times. So the nobles stood between a rock and a hard place. They don't want to look like they're surrendering, but they also need to remember that if they wanted to keep fighting, they'd probably been slaughtered. There would have been no more Scots left if they did that. So it was wise at the time, and of course when the Bruce come, the rest was history. Bannockburn was a massive success, but all the little battles in between, all the little ambushes that he'd set up, building up to Bannockburn, he was an absolute brutal genius, was the Bruce. Even just getting himself crowned to become Scottish king, being recognised as the King of Scotland, the brutality that the Bruce clan actually did, from up the west coast, all the way around the Highlands and back down, sacking parts of Scotland to take out the opposing family that were vowing for the crown as well at that time. Was quite an interesting story too. So thanks very much. As I said, the link to the original video, as always, will be in the description section below if you want to check it out. And if you'd like a personalised video request and shout out, please check out our Patreon account in the description section below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, comment and share and put the bell on. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. I am the Dawn Father, and I'll see you all soon. Goodbye. bye.